All right, power forward. This one's easy for me. Tim Duncan, number one all time. Timmy. 5 rings. Was in the playoffs like 21 years in a row or something like that. I don't think I'm kidding. I mean, he just that's what he did. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, he made it he made it every year of his career,
yeah,
right?
And I'm pretty sure it was like 21 years.
Yeah.
He's absolutely incredible. He actually just consistent, and he never committed a foul in his entire career, which is great, which puts him high on this list. But no, I gotta love him. Fantastic. Has made that he made the Spurs franchise.
Greatest franchise player in the history of the NBA.
Yep, agreed. And a long career. He won titles like, what was it, like 7 years apart?
Odd year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but then it was like 7 years after, he won another one. I mean, it's just a great
99,
career.
03, 05, 07, 14.
Yeah, fantastic career.
Final numbers for his career: 19.3 points per game, 10.9 rebounds, 2.2 blocks. Shot over 50% from the floor. The numbers themselves don't blow you away, but the fact that his team was invariably successful.
Right.
He was always on the court. He was always doing the right thing. Think about this guy wasn't a three-point shooter. Those clutch three-point shots in overtime and at the end of regulation in that finals series, I mean, just a stud. Always understood the moment, was never scared of it. And what's weird about him is he's a transitional figure, but it's like he was transitioning back to something because he didn't have modern NBA athleticism.
No. Yeah, you're right. He had a old school low post game.
He was using the bank shot. Like he was bringing stuff back. This guy's a straight up throwback.
Yep.
And
but he did it better than anybody has ever done it.
And he was a joy to watch. And, I remember Steve Lamb, shout out Steve Lamb, one time telling me, yeah, I know he looks slow, but you got to understand, he's still faster than anyone you've ever played.
Right, sure.
Right?
And
he's 7 feet tall.
We talk about these, some of the great basketball minds of all time. Like he's one of those for sure. And by all accounts, a fantastic leader, and helped build a franchise. And you said, 19, points a game doesn't sound like that much, but I'm sure that he's in the top 20 of scoring all time, and the top 15 of rebounding all time, and the top 10 of blocks all time. I mean, I'm sure of those things because
he's 14 all time on points. He's got he's sandwiched in between Paul Pierce and Dominique Wilkins at 13.
Okay.
Yeah. Rebounds, I agree. He's definitely top 10. And he is number 6.
Rebounds?
Yep. Above Karl Malone, whose name you might hear shortly. And just behind Moses Malone.
Nice.
A guy who probably won't get the respect that he deserves.
For sure. All right. So number 2, power forwards, and this is going to be me with a little bit of bias. Everybody knows that my second favorite Pacer of all time is Antonio Davis, because I have an emotional connection to him, not because he's the second best Pacer of all time. I think I can argue that this man is the second best power forward, but it's definitely biased by the fact that I love him. Kevin Garnett. He's got a ring.
Thought you didn't like dirty players, man.
I know. He wasn't always dirty.
But he turned into the nut puncher.
I know.
That was like his superhero.
I know, but he just was obsessed with winning, just like Isaiah Thomas.
If you're going to take a dirty player, you take Karl Malone.
We'll see if I get there or not. I'm not taking Karl Malone now. I'm not. There's no way I'm doing it. There's no way Karl Malone's number 2, and I will keep this pod going until you change your mind. Karl Malone's not number 2. You can pick anybody else you want. Karl Malone is not the second best power forward of all time. Never won a ring. Kind of a douchebag. I'm out.
Kind of.
Total douchebag.
But so was Kevin Garnett.
The mail doesn't deliver on Sundays.
Oh, yes, it does. Brings me Amazon.
No, Kevin Garnett, one of my favorite players of all time.
He was one of my favorite players all time in Minnesota.
Okay, and it changed when he went to Boston.
Yeah, and lost his mind.
He became a defensive force. He was always a defensive force.
He was always a defensive force.
He had a really long... My internet sucks right now. He had a really long career. He had a 20-year career. Is that true? 19.
You're talking about Kevin Garnett?
Yeah.
21. Carmelo had 19.
21. My goodness. And one of my favorite things that he did early in his career is that he started averaging 20, 10, and 5. So 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. And I think the stat was that only 7 guys had ever done that ever in their careers. And that only one other player had done it twice, which was Larry Bird. And then he went ahead and did it for, I think, like 5 years in a row, 6 years in a row, something like that. Just a unique all-around player. Always averaged basically a steal and a half and a block and a half. Just a fantastic defender. He's got a regular season MVP. He's got Defensive Player of the Year.
I feel like I tell this story often enough that I probably just reinvented it completely. I should probably actually go look it up at some point. But living in Minnesota back in the day, Kevin Garnett was far and away the best player that this team had in the Timberwolves history, obviously not the Lakers Minnesota history. But the GM at the time was not interested in drafting a player out of high school. He wanted somebody NBA ready, somebody who's going to come in and make an impact. They bring in Kevin Garnett for a personal workout, and his trainer guy says, "Hey, go up and hit the backboard." Kevin Garnett, takes a running start, goes up, hits the top of the backboard, lands, and then from a dead stop jumps up and hits the top of the backboard.
Yeah.
And that is how Kevin Garnett ended up getting drafted. Yeah. I mean, that kind of freak athleticism and length, that hadn't been seen before. Yeah. It hadn't. The guy was a really special player, and he was tenacious defensively. Yeah.
And just driven as hell. I mean, and eventually that turned him into slightly a crazy person.
Same can be said of Karl Malone.
Sure. But and one of the reasons his overall career numbers are only 18, 10, and 4 is that he stuck around a long time. I mean, he went back to Minnesota to retire with them and be a mentor his last 2 years. There's a lot that I respect about what he did, as a basketball player.
He just wasn't a good scorer. He just wasn't. Not on all NBA standards. I think what was his best year? 24 points per game. I mean, Karl Malone over the course of his career averaged 25.
Yeah, but he also had 14 rebounds a game that year. He was just but
over the course of their careers, Karl Malone averaged more rebounds per game.
Yeah, fair enough.
And granted, Kevin Garnett played 2 more years, but
and those 2 years definitely hurt his. I mean, his last 2 years he averaged 7.6 and then 3.2. He was just a spot guy off the bench. He was a mentor in the locker room.
But Karl Malone was older when he played his 2 years than Kevin Garnett was.
Yeah.
Because Kevin Garnett came out of high school. I mean, I get it. I get all that. But the fact of the matter is Karl Malone, his stats are just better.
Sure. But Kevin Garnett was a better defender. And
Karl Malone was way, way better offensively in an age when scoring mattered.
Garnett's got
way better. Better.
Garnett's got a ring.
Yeah, as the third best player.
That's not true. He was not the third best player at that point.
Ray Allen might have been. I don't know. It's a toss up.
All right. Well,
he hit a guy in the nuts, man.
Karl Malone is not getting on my list at number 2, so you can pick somebody else. That's fine. How about Dirk Nowitzki, the number 2?
No, God, no. Barkley, maybe.
You think Barkley's better than Dirk Nowitzki?
Yes, unequivocally.
Dirk Nowitzki's been playing for 21 years. I'm talking. There are things that get you somewhere, and longevity is one of those things. Consistency is one of those things, and rings get you some, and some. Dirk's got a ring, and Barkley doesn't. I hate to throw that in Barkley's face yet again, but I'm throwing it in Karl Malone's face, and don't feel
Dirk
bad.
has one garbage ring.
It was not garbage. He went up against LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and he won it pretty much by himself.
He's got one garbage ring.
It's not garbage.
Look, Charles Barkley, 22, almost 12, a steal and a half a game, shot 54% over the course of his career, and a guy was like 5'6".
No, okay, no, fair enough. The man literally was 6'4", right? 6'3". Kenny Smith is always, they always stand next to each other, and Barkley's smaller than Kenny the Jet Smith. Was he the Jet?
Yeah,
did I make that up?
He was. That's correct.
So yeah, like he might have been like 6'2", and he played power forward, and they called him the round mound of rebound, unstoppable force in the open court.
Another 5 slammer jammer guy, I believe.
And probably should have won a ring in Phoenix and probably in Philly when he wasn't he with Dr. J and Moses Malone in Philly? And then went to Phoenix, and that team was fantastic in '93.
Yeah, he was very young, though. I mean, he caught the tail end of their careers there.
Right. But that great team in Phoenix, but they ran into Jordan. Really, and also, not only was he an amazing rebounder, scorer, especially for his size, it's unbelievable. I mean, you think about a guy that's, the height of Steph Curry getting 14 rebounds a game. I mean, that's just outrageous. Like, that doesn't make sense.
He owned the paint in a way that no one had ever seen.
I agree. And also could rebound and run a fast break in a way that nobody saw in big men in that era. Now
also,
LeBron does it all the time. But
douchebag.
Right. And part of his charm, his TNT personality and the stuff he's done politically and all that stuff is helps me like him more. But I can't say. I mean, his career was fairly short, if I remember. 13 seasons?
Charles Barkley played from 84 to 2000.
Oh, so longer than I thought.
Yep, he's an 11-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA. So that's not nothing.
No. Garnett is a 15-time All-Star and a 9-time All-NBA. And he's got a ring. Just saying.
Right, but Charles' stats are actually better. He's got 22 points a game, 11.7 rebounds a game, a steal and a half a game, and shot 54% from the floor. His numbers are much, much, much better.
Sure, but not on a career, right? I mean, we're also talking about longevity, right?
On his career. Yeah.
No. But I'm saying his career numbers aren't going to be as good.
You're saying totals?
Yes, totals.
Oh. Yeah, he's got way more points.
Right.
And rebounding, no, he's not going to win that. But, I mean, are you going to sit here and tell me that Kevin Garnett's just a better rebounder than Charles Barkley? Is that the argument? Is that where we're at?
No, I'm not saying he's a better rebounder.
So he's got way less points. We're saying that they're basically equal at rebounding. Of course, Kevin Garnett's the better defender. But of the two, I would take Charles Barkley all day.
Charles Barkley didn't really care about keeping himself in shape. He didn't take. He's the Prince of Pizza. He was the round mound of rebound. I mean, yeah,
it worked for him. Do I need to read the stats again? I mean, these aren't Hall of Fame stats. These are like greatest of all time. These are greatest at your position all time stats. These are amazing stats.
Yeah. All right. So all we've decided is that Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward of all time, and then we're arguing over Kevin Garnett, Karl Malone, Barkley, and I'm throwing in Dirk, and you don't even want to hear Dirk.
Dirk's just not even a power forward. He's a 3.
He played power forward his entire career.
I know, and it was silly because he can't rebound. Right? He's slow. Like, I don't know. Look, he's a great shooter, but that's all that he is. He can't defend anybody. He can't lead a team. Not really. Like, what does Dirk do? Like, I'd rather have Kevin McHale.
Okay. What about a Bob Pettit?
I'm not opposed to Bob Pettit, but I do have. Well, I think I've got McHale higher, but I'm not opposed to. Not opposed to him. So McHale, 18 points a game, 7.3 rebounds, 1.7 blocks, 55% from the floor, and 3 championships. Also, arguably the league's greatest enforcer.
I thought McHale was one of the better low post players on the block in the history of the game.
Concur. Apparently, though, Bob Pettit just wins. 26, 16, and 3. He only shot 43% and only won 1 championship in 58, but my God. 26 and 16?
He's got 2 MVPs.
11-time All-Star, 11-time MVP, and a Roy. He's got all the accolades that...
His Hawks went to 4 titles, even though they only won 1, so that matters. He was also the first player in NBA history to ever get 20,000 points and 10,000 rebounds.
Tim Duncan, for sure.
Okay, so Pettit's on this list for sure.
Well, Tim Duncan we can agree on.
Yep.
And so that leaves us with KG, Nowitzki, Malone, Barkley, and Pettit, right?
Yeah. I think that's all there is. I don't think there's anybody else on the list. You said McHale.
I mean, the reason... I mean, I
feel
hate
like McHale's a solid
I hate
6.
I hate McHale, but he's the greatest enforcer in the history of basketball, and that's an important thing. Okay, so I'll give you KG at 3. Or at 2, rather.
At 2, yay!
But in exchange...
give you Malone at 3?
Yeah, Karl Malone's definitely 3.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take Barkley at 4.
Okay. Can we put Pettit at 5 then?
Yep.
Dirk's
and then we're
at
leaving
6?
Dirk off at 6.
Okay. All right.
Dirk's that weird thing where it's like he changed the position, but kind of not really, because in as much as he changed the shooting part, like he forgot all the other stuff.
Right.
You know?
Sure. And really it's if he
forgot the power part of forward.
But if he had stopped playing 3 years ago and also he'd not won that ring, I mean, he's not even a guy we even think of, right?
Yeah, like not even marginally, right?
Right. So we'd maybe talk about him as one of the great foreign players of all time or something like that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
He'd go on
he's
a list
best
with
foreign-born player of all time.
Yeah, he'd go on a list with Arvydas Sabonis and Ginobili and Parker.
Right, but he played his whole career here, right? And
yeah.
It was long and productive and important. And,
sure. But I think his longevity and that ring put him in that top 5 for me, but I'm willing to admit that you're right. He didn't do any of the other things that these other players did, so we'll put him at 6.
And I mean, really, if he'd have been on the Spurs instead of the Dallas Mavericks, like maybe it's a different story for Dirk. You know, maybe he is one of these great role players of all time. But the reality that Tim Duncan was doing it contemporaneously makes you look bad, right?
Sure. Well, and let's but I mean, I don't think it's a bad career to be the 6th best power forward of all time. We're not shitting on Dirk
for his family. Würzburg, Germany is crying into their napkins right now.
But you should tweet at us if you disagree. Particularly if you're from Germany, tweet at Harper, because I don't want to mess with that.
Shout out Würzburg. Y'all rock.
All right, so
now finally, for what used to be the most important position in NBA basketball and now doesn't matter a lick.
It doesn't matter at all. Nobody has centers. You just win titles without centers now.
But weirdly, the hardest position of all of these.
Really?
Because for so long it was dominated by centers.
Yes.
There's a lot of names here, man.
I would say that probably there are 8 centers in the top 20 of all time, top 20 players of all time. Like, so that's
disproportionate.
Yes, it is definitely disproportionate. I think this is the most stacked class. For me, it shook out pretty easily, but you're right, it is the most stacked class.
The most, I mean, in Wilt Chamberlain, you have the most outlandishly good relative to competition player ever. He's not the greatest player ever, but in his time,
he scored 100 points in a game.
Yeah, he's 100 points in a game. He averaged for a season like 40 rebounds or something. Like, we don't even know.
It was 50 rebounds in a season.
50. My bad, Coalson.
Well, actually, maybe it was 50 points. That's what it was. It was 50 points and 40 rebounds. I think you're right.
Or 30 rebounds. Like, I don't even know what it was.
He also did,
it's outlandish.
He also led the league in assists one year just because he could, with like 11
Just because he could.
Yeah.
You've got the greatest scorer in all time in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You've got the greatest winner in all time in Bill Russell, who won as a player, coach, and then just a coach, and right. Was the emotional leader of all those teams. To say nothing of Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, Moses Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, Dikembe Mutombo, George Mikan, Alonzo Mourning.
Sure.
I mean, there are names for days.
Sure.
But it's hard to channel your like 1960s basketball fanness.
Right.
To stack these guys up.
For me, I broke it down thusly. I tried.
That just got me right off the bat. Thusly. All right, Elson.
I tried to decide within these things, on all of these for sure, but in this one it seemed pretty clear to me that I put winning first, then longevity, and then how it shaped the game, kind of in that order, right? So for me, Bill Russell is the greatest winner of all time. He won 11 rings in 13 years. He also, when you talk about transitional figure, a man who understood that the team was more important than your own stats. He wasn't really interested in scoring. He did everything else. We've talked before about how they didn't record blocks when he was playing, but everybody says he blocked everything that went up at all times. So he could be the leader in blocks all time. We just don't know it. He's, I believe, the top 5 in rebounds of all time, but his per game is number 2 behind Wilt. Is he? He's 2 all time anyway. I just think that kind of winning culture matters. You agree with me, right?
I mean, of course I do. I mean, I have him as the greatest defensive player in the history of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many rebounds per game he averaged over the course of his career?
I'm thinking it's like 22.9.
Well, I had it at 22.5, but I'll go ahead and give it to you, even though you went over. So, Price is Right style, you lost.
I did lose,
but only 15 points a game, but also had 4 assists. And I mean, the man won 11 championships.
Yep. And also, you talk about the player-coach thing all the time, and you're right. That's insane. He won 2 rings being the coach/player.
Yeah, because he was staying ahead of the NBA was changing at the time. People were trying to figure out how to catch up to these guys, and he was a smart enough player and coach to stay ahead of the curve as the game changed around him. He deserves tons of credit. He's the most underrated basketball player in NBA history, and no one has him as the best center of all time, let alone the greatest player of all time, except us. And it's a travesty. Bill Russell's the greatest. Love
but
it.
you don't have him as you do have him as the best center, but you're saying people in general don't. You're saying people.
Yes, I'm saying other lists do not have it. I've looked around. Like it's always Kareem, and then it's Wilt, and then it's Bill. But guess why Wilt doesn't have more championships?
Right.
It's because of Bill Russell. That's why.
That's exactly why. Because every year he went up against Bill Russell, and every year he lost. Wilt has all the stats for sure, and he changed the game. They had to change the court because of him. They had to change the rules because of him. And
so
that's
why is Kareem better? Like, I understand that he did it for a long time and did it well, but why do you have Kareem above Wilt?
So for me, if you can go ahead and be an unguardable force down low for 21 years, you basically got the same. So Lou Alcindor was his name when he entered the league. You know, he gets a ring with Oscar Robertson in Milwaukee, and then he goes to LA and becomes the elder statesman with Magic. You're essentially getting the same stats, like 15 years apart. The man's got 6 rings, I believe, or is it 7?
6.
6. So he's got 6 rings.
Some of them with Magic.
So 5 with Magic, 1 with Oscar Robertson. He also has, he's got the most points in the history of the NBA. He had the most unguardable shot in the history of the NBA, the sky hook and the low post. I just think that when you're thinking about, so if you were going to draft a team, right? I mean, do you want Wilt Chamberlain's dominance for 12 years, or do you want the consistency dominance for 21 years? And for me, it's Kareem. That's what I'm picking over Wilt, I think.
So career stats, Kareem 24 and a half points a game. He just did it forever. Still, over 11 rebounds per game, 2.6 blocks per game, shot almost 56% for his career. I mean, just outstanding stuff. However, Wilt Chamberlain, for his career, between 59 and 74. It's not a short career.
So that's 15 years?
15 years.
15 years, okay.
30 points a game. 23, just shy of 23 rebounds a game.
Okay.
4.4 assists a game. And still shot 54%. I mean, we can make the argument about who's the better teammate or what have you. But unless you know exactly where your number 2 pick is on a franchise all-time, I mean, you have to pick Wilt. No one has been more dominant in NBA history than Wilt Chamberlain. He's the most dominant player that ever played the game.
So if we, it's really hard to span eras, right? So it's hard to say, Bill Russell, what would his impact with his size and skill, his athleticism be in today's game? Would he be Clint Capella? I mean, my argument would be that he was better because he's smarter and got more will.
No, he's more like, he's
winning.
Kevin Garnett, right?
Okay. But he was
Wilt
only
Chamberlain's
6'9" or
flipping
whatever.
Shaq.
Right, but in today's league, he wouldn't be, right? I mean, he's 7 feet tall. It's not.
But at the time,
he
was.
Yes, he was playing with 6'3" white guys. He was. A monster.
If we're gonna start importing time zones here, then yeah, Dr. J is not that great either. Guess what? He's gonna get shut down too.
Well, no. But what I'm saying is that I'm not trying to say that he's not great. What I'm saying is that it's hard to figure out what these things mean as far as eras played in. He was definitely the most dominant basketball player of his era. And yet...
of all time, period.
Well, no. And yet he lost to Bill Russell every time.
That's because Bill Russell took away the 30 points per game, 23 rebounds per game.
Yeah. Because he's awesome.
Yeah, because he's super awesome.
Because he's the best center of all time.
Yes.
Okay.
But on a night-in, night-out basis, 30 points per game and 23 rebounds. I mean, I don't know how you argue that that's not the most dominant. I mean, there's no kind of argument that that's the most. I mean, he was bigger, stronger, faster, and better than everyone else. He just was.
Yeah. All right. I'll take Wilt at 2, but I got to have Kareem at 3.
No argument.
Okay. Fair enough.
Shaq.
You got Shaq at 4?
Talk to me about Shaq, baby.
Well, so we just, one of the things I said was longevity, and then also the way that you changed the game. Shaq changed the game. I mean, we had to change rules just like they did. We had to change the court just like they did for Wilt.
We had to change the damn backboards.
Yeah,
we had
exactly.
to keep extra hoops on the court.
Exactly.
Because he was just ripping them off the pylons, man.
Yep.
The guy's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. I think he is one of the most dominant forces in the history of the league. He's got...
I don't know what you're talking about.
That was pretty good. That's pretty good. He's got 4 rings. He's got 1 with Miami, 3 with LA.
Correct, yeah. Everybody forgets about the D Wade 40 free throw wing.
D Wade doesn't forget about that one.
No, he doesn't.
But yeah, I the only thing I would say about Shaq is that I felt like he left a little bit on the table because he didn't take it that seriously. He never really came in shape.
Charles Barkley syndrome, right?
Yeah.
He never really...
You always talked... I remember, at the time, you talked about how smart he was at low post passing, and I'd be like, no, he's not. He's a big, dumb guy. And then I'd watch him, and he wasn't. His footwork for feet that size that were, what he had, 17-size shoes or whatever it was, is absolutely incredible. There's nobody
he was adding those things,
his
though.
size.
That's the thing. He was adding those things. He really was. Like, he did care about the game.
Oh, no, I don't think that he didn't care about basketball. I just don't think that he took it as seriously. He didn't compete the way that a Kevin Garnett did or
I disagree
or
with that.
LeBron James did.
I think there's a difference between learning stuff about the game and taking care of your body. Right?
Okay.
And I think that's something that's really changed in the past 20 years, and our generation we don't relate to very well because the athletes that we see, like, nutrition has changed so much. Like, these guys were allowed to eat KFC 4 times a week. They didn't nobody cared.
Right.
And Shaq and Charles Barkley, they were like, well, hey, I'm super talented. I'm going to learn some new stuff, but I'm doing what I want to do. LeBron has never been like that, right? He's got I've got to add something and I have to take care of my body thing. And Shaq and Charles Barkley didn't have that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think about... we talked about Kevin McHale, right? As potentially one of the top power forwards of all time, and like that dude didn't have workout regimens.
Gary Payton,
that guy was eating beer and smoked cigarettes in between. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Vlade Divac. I mean, exactly. This was rampant in the NBA. Guys would get drunk and go play basketball.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's a different era, and
at least Shaq wasn't drunk. You're right.
That's the name of the pod. Shaq is definitely on my top 5, but I know
who's in front of him.
My favorite.
I know.
One of my favorite players of all time, and if it weren't for Bill Russell, I'd probably argue him being the greatest center of all time. Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon.
Yep.
I grew up. This was the era of me growing up and watching basketball, and I have, outside of Reggie hitting those crazy shots in clutch moments that blew my mind, I don't think I've watched anything that has enchanted me as much before or since, which was Hakeem Olajuwon. The dream shake, the stuff he did in the post. I remember watching his 70-point game or whatever it was. It wasn't 70, but it was like, maybe, did he have a 70-point game? It was something really close to that. Maybe it was a playoff game where he scored like 50 or something. And I thought, this man will never miss. It doesn't matter. You can't guard him. He was, when you think about the kind of player that can score at will, rebound everything that comes off the glass, block every shot. He averaged 4.6 blocks in a season one year. His for the career it was 3.1, and that's after like the last 3 or 4 years where he wasn't really blocking shots. He was always over a steal a game. You're talking about one of the best defensive forces in the history of the game, and also just could score at will. His overall averages go down low because he's stuck around the game, probably past his prime. He ends up with 22 a game, 11 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.7 steals, and 3.1 blocks. But he came in as a rookie scoring 20 points a game. He was 20 and 12. And at his peak, he was scoring 28 a game. It's just, he was absolutely unstoppable. He's got 2 rings. The guy had like never played basketball before when they found him in Africa. He was like playing soccer. and they're like, "Hey, you're tall. You want to play some basketball?" And to do what he did, I just think he's absolutely incredible. I think he needs to be above Shaq at 4 because he's a guy that he had a nice long career. Like I said, he's probably stuck around too long, but he played for 16, 17 years. I got him above Shaq.
It's actually funny that you said that because I was about to rip off the list of honorable mentions, and I was gonna brag that I got you to Hakeem at 5 because that's where most people have him. But I assumed that you would have him at like number 2. So I was like, getting you to rational. And so your push for 4, I will take it. All day.
Okay.
Conceded.
All
He's
right.
at 4.
Nice.
And like, for the record, I don't agree. I think Shaq was a better player. But Hakeem, look, it's hard to say a bad thing about the guy. And at the risk of being like, well, whatever. In this same conversation, we have to talk about Dikembe Mutombo, one of the greatest players and one of the greatest ambassadors for the game and one of the greatest ambassadors back to Africa. Again, a guy who wasn't playing basketball. Like, these guys have similar stories on a certain level.
Sure.
And they both had these amazing skill sets and great NBA careers, and they took that home. Like, Dikembe Mutombo's a damn doctor. Like, It's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, that guy is awesome. So, it's probably unfair for me to just tie them together. It's probably glib of me.
Sure.
But they are two of my favorite basketball players of all time. I love them both. Again, just ambassadorship, right?
Sure.
Bringing basketball to the world and bringing wealth and health to their communities. Yeah. No one has done it better, and they both deserve, 1 and 2
Shouts
all time
out.
in NBA history for doing that. So
yeah, for sure.
That.
Yeah.
To add, other people who might have made this list, if Coalson and I weren't arguing, Moses Malone.
I love Moses Malone. I want him on this list.
Player.
It's just so. It's such a good
sinners.
list.
It's hard, man. I'm telling you.
Moses
you gotta
Malone
leave people
is
off that you care about.
One of the. Yes, he wasn't doing Russell and Wilt level rebounding, but he's right behind them.
But 12 a game in the modern era? I mean, that's not nothing, man.
Yep. So, to wrap up here, Pacer fans, at power forward, I don't think we did. Did we do the wrap up at power forward?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I'm confident that we did, but you might want to put it on wax just in case.
So it looks like we have power forward Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Karl Malone, Barkley and Pettit. Was that the order? All right. And then for center, we've got Bill Russell at number 1, the best center of all time. Number 2, Wilt Chamberlain. There might be a fist fight later, but we'll go ahead with Wilt. Number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 4, Hakeem Olajuwon. And number 5, Shaquille O'Neal, with honorable mention to Dikembe Mutombo and Moses Malone and George Mikan.
I love the NBA.
Yeah, it's pretty great. If anyone's still listening, God bless you. And look forward to next week when we do our schedule pod.
We're at Undebeatables on Twitters, theundebeatables.com. You can review our show anywhere. You guys are smart. You know how to do that.
That's right. It's the internet. Just Google it.
And I'm not sure if we ever actually have T-shirts, but I don't know if I don't say T-shirts, Coalson won't sing.
That's right. We still have schmediums, I think.
We got schmediums.
For a once and always coach, Bobby Sick Leonard. Turn out the lights. The party is over.
I don't know what you're talking about.